you. So we'll begin the meeting. We do have a quorum. Thank you for joining our June 12th Traffic Council meeting. I'll just begin with introductions. My name is David Kozis. I'm the Transportation Coordinator from the Public Works Department. Other voting members of Traffic Council that I see at the beginning of the meeting are Captain Devine from the Newton Traffic Bureau, our citizen representative, Mitch Fishman, and alternate citizen representative, Margot Spiller. I think that that's all the voting members that I see at the outset of the meeting. I'm sure that we're going to be joined soon by Ned Codd. Oh, I see that he's entering the room.
He's joining right now.
Okay. Welcome, Ned, the Director of Transportation for the Department of Public Works. I don't think that we're going to be joined by a voting member of the City Council tonight. I heard from Councilor Downs, unless we have another member of the City Council that's going to be voting tonight. I do see that we're joined by Councilor Lobovitz from Ward 6. I don't know if you're going to be voting on behalf of the City Council tonight. I don't see. Yes.
I had not intended that.
You are a member of. Oh, you're not.
David, he's not a member of public safety.
That's what I thought.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I think that is all of the members and city councilors that I see at the outset of the meeting. So we'll just begin with our first item of the evening.
Can't read it.
Which I'm going to introduce, and then we'll have a presentation, and then we'll open it up for public comment, and then hopefully a vote. So our first item tonight is TC 2025, David Kozis, Traffic Council Chair, requesting to consider implementing a trial and perhaps eventually to make permanent a change to the traffic circulation on Elm Road so that it becomes one-way westbound from Walnut Street to Lowell Avenue at all times for all vehicles. We first heard this from the high school administration a couple of months ago, and we've been working on hopefully implementing this trial. So we'll begin with the location of Elm Road and the unusual traffic circulation that has been in place since the high school was opened. So starting from Lowell, and can you see the cursor, Danielle? This cursor moving?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So Lowell Avenue is on your left, Walnut Street is to the right. And so coming off of Lowell Avenue, it is a two-way street, Elm Road, but then it becomes one-way eastbound, and then it becomes two-way again, closer to Walnut Street. However, coming in from Walnut Street, you have a do not enter during the peak times. The peak arrival times, 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., and then 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. You cannot turn left or right. You cannot enter Elm Road from Walnut Street. There is a left turn pocket on Walnut Street, but you still cannot use that pocket to turn into Elm Road during these restricted hours. You have 4 signs posted as you travel westerly. And then you get to the loading dock, and suddenly there's a do not enter sign. It becomes one way at that point. So here is a view coming in from Walnut Street. You see the sign, an example of the sign that says do not enter 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. school days. We do know that there are many vehicles that ignore that sign. We see parents and other vehicles coming into Elm during these restricted hours, regardless of the 4 signs that are posted. And then as you travel westerly, it becomes a do not enter. You see this do not enter sign back here, right after the loading dock. So it causes confusion when vehicles suddenly can't enter at that point, and causes unsafe maneuvering, maybe turning around in the loading dock or continuing through the do not enter sign and traveling in the wrong direction for a while until it becomes two-way again, a little further. So, here's the example of these are where the posted signs are that the vehicles can no longer enter and have to somehow make a U-turn or turn into the loading dock to go back out toward Walnut Street. And it's confusing. We've seen examples of buses, especially from other districts that are coming to the athletic fields, that maybe they are entering Elm Road from Walnut Street during the times that are not restricted, and they can enter and then they can continue toward the athletic field. But then when they see that they can't continue, here's an image of a bus that just didn't know what to do, I guess, and turned into the loading dock, parked there, let the students off, and somehow backed up to go out in the correct direction. We have heard from the high school vice principal and administration that over the past, even just this year, we have had a student that was hit by a car. We've had a staff vehicle totaled, a lot of unsafe maneuvering. Also, we have this sort of awkward situation where all of these cars that you see, this is the two-way portion of Elm Road, right close to Walnut Street, near the Walnut Street staff parking lot. They're all actually parked facing in the wrong direction because this is a two-way street right here. But, they can't enter from Walnut Street in the morning. So they are all entering from Lowell Avenue and parking in the direction that they're driving. But, it is the wrong direction most of the day. These cars are, so it's really an unusual traffic circulation pattern. Also exiting onto Walnut Street during PM dismissal. It's very difficult to turn, especially left from Elm Road onto Walnut Street. There's a traffic signal very, very close right at Cabot Street. So there's quite a backup. It's hard to get out. Here's a view of the traffic, sort of waiting in the queue to get down to Walnut Street to exit at the end of the school day. So a recommendation is to try something different. We don't know exactly how it's going to end up going, but the recommendation is to have a trial of a one-way circulation pattern so that all vehicles would enter from Walnut Street. That left turn lane would be easy to use. It's already there. The signs, the do not enter signs, would be removed. We'd have a one-way westerly circulation pattern. We would need to remove a little bit of parking because the buses would be coming in from Walnut Street, coming around, turning into the theater entrance loop, and then exiting and turning left, westerly again, exiting at Lowell Avenue. So we would need to remove a little bit of staff parking to just accommodate the turns for the buses and maybe allow some queue storage if needed. And we actually, the next slide is, one other thing that would be beneficial about a westerly circulation pattern is for staff themselves, because they would be entering the school property from Walnut Street, right? Probably many of them would try and park in the Walnut Street lot. If there's not a space in this staff lot, they would, come back out, have to turn left, be able to try and find a space along Elm Road or in the theater lot. If there's still no spaces, they would turn left again, continue looking down Elm Road. There's more spaces further down to the west, and if there's still no spaces, it dumps you out right at Lowell Avenue anyway, right near the other staff parking lot. So I think that circulation pattern is maybe beneficial. So here is a pavement marking plan that was completed by my former colleague, Adrian Ayala, who used to be a voting member of Traffic Council. He recently left the city for another job. And so this is, before he left, he created this pavement marking plan for a trial, which shows the westerly one-way traffic flow. It shows a bike lane, a westerly bike lane at the, through this area. It shows the removal of the staff parking right here in this crosshatched area, and then further down, so that, like I said before, the buses would be able to make the turn in or queue up if necessary, make the turn out, and then continue westerly. We think we can add 4 parking spaces or 5 parking spaces in this area closer to Walnut Street, where parking doesn't exist right now. And there's also room for a contraflow bike lane, leaving this area. There's a lot of bike racks down here, a lot of students bicycling. They could have their own lane exiting onto Walnut Street, where you have bike lanes on Walnut Street already. So that is the pavement marking plan. Oh, I have a movie that we took just to make sure that the buses are able to negotiate the turns and be able to get in and out of the theater entrance, which is where they all are currently picking up and dropping off the students. We can just take a minute and just watch this movie. So this is where we temporarily removed the parking spaces. The bus didn't even really need that space, but they requested it. And then here, turning into the theater entrance, we removed some spaces here on Elm Road. So it's a pretty easy maneuver for this driver. Of course, we don't have other vehicles here right now in this test case, but we think it's doable. The driver agreed. So our recommendation is to hold this item as a long-term trial. We wanted to hear this traffic council item now in June, so that if it is held for a trial, we do have time over the summer to make all of the changes, to create change the signs, change the painting, get the message out over the summer and have it all in place to have the one-way circulation before the beginning of the next school year. So that's the recommendation. If it's approved and all the changes are made, we would be monitoring this trial during the next school year. We can make adjustments because it's a trial. We don't need to come back to traffic council to make adjustments to the trial. And if we do find, we really don't know how it's going to work out. The situation, as I was describing in this presentation, it's very confusing, and it's pretty bad right now. So hopefully this will improve things. But if not, we could end the trial and just return it back to our current circulation pattern. And we would be coming back to traffic council anyway. If it is a success, we would still need to come back to traffic council to vote to make that change permanent. So that is the presentation for this item, and I'd like to open it now for public comment. If anyone from the public wants to speak on this item, now is the opportunity. Please just raise your hand or wave and we can call on you. Karen Winker. We just need to know your street or your address for the record.
Hi, Karen Wenger, 256 Ward Street. I am the chair for the Safe Route to School Task Force in Newton, representing parents at various schools, trying to make the streets safer around our school and encourage active commuting. And I think this would definitely be an improvement over the safety, especially given the number of accidents. I think I've seen 5 accidents reported in the state database since 2020. I've seen one where a student was injured in a biking biking car collision. And so, anything that can be done to make it safer and less confusing for drivers is definitely something that we want to encourage. I have a question over the idea of leaving those 5 parking spaces on the north side of Elm Road versus leaving more space for a protected bike lane. And also having a contraflow bike lane all along versus not. I feel like students might just go with their bikes anyway, regardless of the circulation pattern. And I wonder if how much is that those 5 parking spaces are needed versus not, and how big a difference would it be not to have them?
Right. And so I did talk to Adrian about this before he left. We talked about, could we or should we at this point continue the contraflow bike lane further down? And we decided let's think about that as a phase 2 in the future. The main thing that we really wanted to know from this trial is, how does it work in terms of the traffic circulation? Is it better? Is it better for the buses? We don't know how the parents are going to react for pickup and drop off. There's a lot of things we don't know yet, but we did talk about a longer contraflow bike lane. Maybe it would go through the theater, parking lot. It is definitely something that we could continue to think about even during the trial, just because we have this image. Like I said before, additional changes could be made. Maybe we won't have all those 5 parking spaces, or maybe we don't need to have all of them removed that are shown as being removed. So as a trial, we're lucky that we can continue to make changes, during the entire trial period. Ned, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would, and I talked with Adrian about this plan too, and I think David makes good points. What I would say is, I would not favor contraflow bike lane around that curve. I think that would be dangerous. Sort of that stretch. We had talked about the possibility of directing cyclists through the theater loop, but sort of in a low speed shared roadway environment.
Right. And we also know, even with the current circulation patterns, bicyclists ride through this whole stretch anyway. They enter from Walnut Street when vehicles are not supposed to be entering. Clearly, they're entering onto Elm Road. There's traveling in the wrong direction on the one-way street. I think that we could probably expect that behavior to continue, but I think the whole goal of this trial is to see if, and we know it's not going to be perfect, but can we make it a little better, a little safer, a little less confusing? Any other comments from the public? I don't see any. Oh, Mitch.
So I like the concept. I think it'll be a much more understandable system. Those 5 spaces, I don't know. I guess if Andrea Downs was here, she'd probably say it's good to have the 5 spaces because it'll slow down cars coming in from Walnut to Elm. But I also think it might also add to the confusion a little bit, particularly where you have a opposite directing bike lane. And it looks like buses have to curve a little bit, not to mention cars. So I'm skeptical of that. And the other thing is, which kind of, relates to this, is what it looks like the net decrease in parking spaces maybe is in the neighborhood of 5 to 15 or something. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's around 8.
Around 8.
I think we're losing like 13 and adding 5 back.
So is that an issue? I mean, that one picture you had where the cars were on both sides looked like it's pretty well jammed up during at least that snapshot when you had it.
Yeah, that's something that we spoke about with the vice principal, with Amy Winston, and it was fine to remove the spaces. And one other comment, I happen to be a parent of a Newton North student, and so I'm there and I can see there are so many students that are sort of walking like sort of across this road in a diagonal way right through this block right here, walking up to Newtonville. So I mean, I think it might be safer to add parking spaces here and sort of narrow down the road even more for the students that are trying to walk across here instead of having it more wide open. Maybe this parking would help the situation to be a little safer. Again, it's something that could be changed. Thank you. Madeline Bork. I don't see you. I see that you have your hand raised, but I don't see the picture of you. If you would like to speak, if you could unmute.
Hello, I'm a student at Newton North, and as a biker, I agree with Kareen that the 5 parking spaces would be much better used as a safer block for the bike lane. I also from another classmate, I think he said that oftentimes people park in the bike lane, and that can be a problem. That may happen. I know it happens in Boston. So yeah, but I think it'd be better as a safer route. Get rid of the 5 parking spaces.
Thank you very much for that comment. I think that's a very excellent comment about, especially, with parents already currently entering onto Elm Road, even when the signs say no enter, do not enter, they still are entering. And so I could definitely see that people might, enter onto Elm Road and park here in this bike lane to let their kids, their students out, or to pick them up even. So I guess if we, if we have the cars parked here, then that can't happen, at least on this stretch. There would be no way to pull over onto the curb. So we'll have to see how it goes. I think that enforcement is going to be very important, especially at the beginning of the school year, to make sure that the rules are followed and to make sure it's as safe as it can be. So I hope that that's something that can happen. Any other comments? Seeing none. Would the members of Traffic Council discussion? Anyone like to make a motion? What do we think? We're looking to hold this item. Ned?
Yeah, I would just offer that, as other people have noted, this is kind of a much simpler and more legible circulation pattern, and exiting, as David discussed, exiting onto Lowell at Elm is, there are fewer conflicts and sort of less congestion immediately adjacent than exiting onto Walnut.
Yeah, I just have a sense that it's going to be easier for vehicles. It's going to be a lot of traffic no matter what. Everyone trying to leave at the same time, plus the whole Lowell lot exiting at the same time. So we'll have to see if it's any better than the current situation. So I don't see any other comments. I would like to go ahead and make a motion to hold this item as a long-term trial to implement the one-way traffic circulation pattern over this summer. Any last comments before we call the roll? Seeing none, Danielle, can you call the roll, please, for hold?
Psicosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Captain Divine,
Aye.
and Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that item is held 4-0.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to see how this turns out. And thank you all for speaking. Let's go on to the next item. So our next item is TC 6223. This one is David Kozis, Traffic Council Chair, requesting to continue the Traffic Council trial, which restricts access to Elm Road from Lowell Avenue to Elm Road residents, Newton North High School staff, school buses, and bicyclists. Traffic Council originally approved this trial in 2020 as part of the TC 11520, which included various traffic and parking changes near school buildings to respond to the safety concerns and changing conditions brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. So this item is sort of a leftover trial that's been ongoing for 5 years. At the beginning of the pandemic, Traffic Council approved a broad trial, and we made a lot of different changes around our schools at that time. Many of them have been ended or changed permanently since then. This is one of the few that is still ongoing. The other one happens to be Tiger permit parking still being allowed in the Austin Street lot. That trial is continuing. But with this trial, now that we just passed this other trial for the one-way westbound circulation pattern, we don't need this trial anymore. You cannot enter Elm Road from Lowell Avenue. Nobody could, as part of the new trial that we just approved. So this item, I think finally we could vote for this trial to end. It's no longer needed. So I am going to make a motion to end this trial, to vote NAN on this docket item. Any questions or any comments on that? Okay. Seeing none, Danielle, can you call the roll for NAN?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mitch,
Aye.
Captain Divine,
Aye.
and Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that's voted. No action necessary. 4-0.
Okay, great. So then our next item is TC 2125. Adrian Ayala, Transportation Engineer, requesting to add 4 new parking meters on the north side of Beacon Street between St. Jude Gate and College Road. So this item, this is the location along Beacon Street, St. Jude Road right here, Hammond Street, this is Beacon Street. So the red rectangle represents the area where the new parking meters could be added. So here's a view of it. Right now you see this stretch right here that there are no meters. But Adrian, again, he was very busy before he left. He did a pavement marking plan to make changes to the bicycle lane on Beacon Street, putting the bike lane close, at the sidewalk or right next to the sidewalk. And let me just move something around. Okay. So in doing that, we're making no change in our traffic and parking regulations to where we already have the metered parking, which ends over here. But there is now an opportunity to add these 4 new parking metered spaces, continuing, to extending the parking meter zone a little bit further to the west. So you would see the parking metered spaces would be creating a buffered bike lane in that area. So our recommendation is to approve this item, and we have the specific technical language on this slide 24 that we're actually voting on, which really is just adding these new parking meter zones. It would continue to be a 3-hour limit. All the other meters are 3 hours in this area, this specific area from 1,020 feet west of the Boston Newton city line to a point 1,100 feet to the west. So that's what we're voting on, to be able to add these 4 parking meters. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Any comments from the members of Traffic Council? Mitch?
David, can you go back to that photograph of the existing condition? So, so the four spaces are in front of that car?
Yeah, I think that they would be around, like where it says Beacon Street and where this car is approximately.
Okay, and then I see. And then go to the proposed, yeah, that one. I mean, I'm not particularly against this, but I wondered, that's such a heavily, the left turn and then the right go around intersection, particularly at, the congestion period in the afternoon, maybe throughout the day, does that actually, it makes it somewhat less legible in getting into that intersection? I mean, did Adrian have any misgivings whatsoever, or because of traffic volumes or accidents or anything?
I had not heard, I mean, maybe Ned can speak on this, but from my point of view, there was no concerns that Adrian expressed to me. There's 1 lane now that widens out to 2 lanes with the left turn lane. That's not changing. We would just be using the space differently and sort of using the currently unused bit of asphalt to create additional parking meters, which are heavily used. Ned, did you have any? I see your hands up. Did you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I think this does shorten the left turn lane, which, in our based on our experience and observations is, currently oversized. We definitely see queuing, particularly in the afternoon, but not sort of, filling the left turn lane.
So that's, I guess, let me just ask, so that, those meters would be, I mean, they're operational through some like 6 or 8, and then you can park there anytime, right? I mean, that's
you would pay the meters like every other meter in the
like
most
every other.
other meters,
Yeah.
8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and then outside of those hours, you can park there and no need to pay.
So did you have any reaction from any of the local district the district councilor in particular, from Lyle or somebody else?
We received no emails from anybody or phone
Yeah.
calls or anything. I haven't, at least. I don't know if you did, Ned.
No.
Is there an urgency to do that this month so it can be ready for school year or something, or is
Yes, because the Beacon Street in this section is going to be repaved this summer, starting probably at some point early in July, and then the pavement markings will be installed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to raise an objection, but it just seems like you'd expect the district council to weigh in on this one way or the other. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mitch. Any other comments from anybody? Would anyone like to make I'll make a motion. So I will make a motion to approve this item and to approve the language shown in on slide 23 and 24. That would be, I think that would be TPR 985, right, Danielle?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that's my motion to approve the language of TPR 985 to add these 4 parking meters. Any last comments? Okay, seeing none, Danielle, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye,
Rich?
aye, sorry.
Okay. Captain Devine
Aye.
and Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0 TPR 985.
Thank you. So this item, we just voted to approve it. We need to wait 20 days. We always have a 20-day appeals period with any vote that we approve before any change is made. So we need to just wait until after July 2nd. And if there's no appeals, then at that point, we would go through the DigSafe process and get the meters, and we would be able to install it in conjunction with the restriping plan. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is,
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So Ned, if you put in 3 rather than 4, you wouldn't have to adjust the left lane queuing?
I believe you still would. That left turn lane is currently very long.
Okay. So you're satisfied that it's a bit under capacity at this point most of the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, thank you, Mitch. So TC 2225 is our next item. This is David Kozis, Traffic Council Chair, requesting to change the parking regulations on Howley Avenue to ensure access for emergency trash and recycling vehicles. So we'll give the presentation, then open it up for public comment. This is a view of where Howley Avenue is located. It's a little dead-end street near Parker Street. Here's a view looking from Parker Street. It's a very, very narrow dead-end street. It's only 15 or 16 feet wide. So the reason that this item got docketed was a complaint from Waste Management. This came into Juanita, who manages the contract for the city. They took this photo, and this is an ongoing problem for them. It's become an issue that the vehicles cannot back down this narrow street whenever there's a car that's parked there, and there's at least one car that seems to park there regularly. So Waste Management has to come back later to be able to provide service to this street. It led to a concern about what would happen during a fire. If there's a house that catches on fire on the street and a car is parked on the street, then the fire truck would have difficulty getting down the street. And then when I went over to take a look, I happened to be there right when I saw a yard waste vehicle coming. I don't know if that's the same car or a different car that's parked there now, but I just happened to notice that even the yard waste vehicle could not back down the street to collect the yard waste. He had to go down the street further down and just sort of bring all of the yard waste up to where the point that the truck was able to get. So this was docketed just out of concern for the residents who live on the street to be able to have a safer street. I know it would be an inconvenience to remove parking that's been used for a long time, but I tried to respond to the complaints and to what I saw and to try to proactively provide for a safer street for these residents and to provide easier, so that their services could continue with trash and recycling in an easier way. So that is my recommendation, to remove parking on Howley Avenue on both sides at all times for safety. And I'm now going to open it up for public comment. All the residents of the street have been notified, right, Danielle, of this meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. So we have one comment. Let me see. Oh, Ann Mildner? If you can unmute. And we just need to know your street or your address for the record. And you should
Are we good now?
Okay.
look. Yeah. Okay. We can hear
Okay.
you now.
Oh,
You're unmuted. I think you can speak.
My wife and I live at 9 Howley Ave. We have been here for 32 years. We have a not stall,
Tandem.
for parking spots. Frankly, we've never had any type of problem or issue since we've been here in 1993. I don't know why this has happened recently. But we do get deliveries on the street from Federal Express and UPS on a regular basis. And there's never an issue with them. I don't know how to provide it through the system, but I do have a video of UPS utilizing the street with, I think, 3 cars on it, without any issues. We do have children who come to the home every day. One of them comes. We have a daughter-in-law who's pregnant who comes to the house. I've got a sister-in-law who's handicapped. She comes to our home weekly. So I don't know what else to say. I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you. I think this came about just now because of the complaints from Waste Management and from just looking at the width of the street. We have been, Traffic Council has brought up different streets over the years that are very narrow and made changes to the parking regulations for safety of the residents. I think that if parking is to be in the end removed from the street, then the residents would need to rely on their driveways more, like shuffle cars in and out if they're tandem driveways, or what is this? Is this Brandeis Road? No. What's this road right here? Oh, it's Wheeler Road, right? So probably that's the nearest on-street parking. That would probably be the closest option to park on Wheeler Road and cross at the light up to Howley Avenue. That's just a suggestion. Other comments? We did not receive any emails. Anne, did you have another comment, or are you good for now?
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, my sister
Go ahead.
my sister-in-law can't walk, so we need some type of something on the street. People utilize the street. Maybe we could come up with something where it could be a limited time on Tuesday when the trash comes. But people enjoy the street. We have cookouts and gatherings on the street. And like I said, going on 33 years, we've never had an issue. So I mean, we've got everybody on the street has families and there's never been any incidents. So maybe on Tuesday we could designate some type of thing.
All right, thank you for that comment. I think there is also concerns about emergency vehicles at any time on any day. But let's see what other people have to say about this. Are there other comments? Is there anyone else from the public first that has any comments on this proposal, especially anyone from the street? Seeing none. Mitch, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Milner took the words out of my mouth. I understand the idea about the emergency vehicles, but and maybe that's something that requires a broader brush. But certainly the Waste Management, it might be worth. Maybe the solution isn't there, but I would say maybe it's worth a trial of some sort. Again, working with Waste Management. I mean, I see the regularity. It's not always in the morning. It's sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes midday. But working on an hour, an hour span, 2 to 3 hours or some limited time that maybe, then Mr. Milner's family or relatives, maybe they work around that as well. It might be a much more limited application, but I guess I would suggest when the appropriate time is to consider a trial on a limited basis and see if that makes a dent in the problem.
And okay, and I would just say we don't have Juanita on this call tonight. I would point out that there's many days of the year that trash pickup is delayed by a day, or yard waste often comes not on the at least a day or two or three later. I've noticed that myself. So it seems we don't have any other regulation like that that's so tailored and dependent on working with a contractor. So I'm not sure. I want to see what others have to say. Other comments? Okay. One other point that I'd like to make is I'm not sure how this vote is going to go, but if it is the case that the majority of traffic council members vote to restrict parking on the street, we do have an appeals process, right? If the residents are extremely unhappy about a vote that is taken, there's a 20-day period to appeal that vote. And if that's the case, then this item gets frozen, gets transferred over to the Public Safety and Transportation Committee of City Council. Everyone would be notified again on the street, and the discussion would move to the jurisdiction of the PS&T committee, and City Council would be making the final decision. Mitch.
So rather than, deal with the appeal option, is there any utility in holding this and until the next regularly scheduled meeting? And in the meantime, try to come up with something that may work 80% of the time, and recognizing that the certain days where it gets extended. I mean, I think if this has been a condition for, in the case of this person or this family since 1993, you're dealing with, and again, taking him at his word that, it's been going okay. And maybe when they show up in the morning, there's no cars there. It's a little bit of a random situation. But if we can put some definition on it, that may not work all the time, but works most of the time, is that worth trying and delaying this to accommodate that? That'd be my question, because again, this is new territory for me as well.
Well, I mean, you're free to make a motion, and you would need to have the majority of traffic council members vote on your motion. Any motion could be made. We could vote to approve it, deny it, hold it, change it. To me, it's a safety issue at all times. So I don't know what other members of traffic council think. Any other comments? Any other thoughts? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Milner. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ann Milner.
You have to unmute, I think.
Too many. Okay, yep, go ahead.
I think that there's something that can be rectified here instead of sacrificing the street for no parking for everybody, because it's just, I mean, unfortunately, like you stated, David, the street is narrower. Unfortunately, that wasn't our doing. It was just, the city. So why we should be punished is, and when everything's been good for almost 33 years. With no violations and things like that. So I don't know. I think we should be able to work something out.
Thank you.
And we did have a previous neighbor that had an elderly mother-in-law, and they did have an ambulance here a couple of times without any issues.
Right, with multiple cars on the street.
And they were at the end of the street.
I'm sure the fire department, they've never been down here. They have a record if they ever came down, that they would be able to utilize the street. I mean, I can get together that the UPS truck coming down the street with no issues whatsoever, and they're just as wide, if not wider, than any service vehicle. So I would just like to work out an option just so we can keep the families together on the street instead of walking 2 or 3 blocks with people who are handicapped, pregnant,
Elderly.
an elderly. I mean, it's just, thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, I appreciate all these comments, and I just want to make it clear that I don't think this item was docketed to punish the neighbors who live on the street. It was clearly an item that was docketed out of concern for the safety of the residents of the street. God forbid there's a fire on the street. We need to ensure that the fire trucks could get down the street. We need to provide, I'm not sure what to say to the waste management if they can't provide service. They're required to provide service onto every street, every home in the city. This was a response to the complaint from Waste Management and just concern for the safety of the residents. Mitch?
I mean, I would make a motion to hold, and I think during that hold, I would certainly. I remember we had that issue on front of Temple Emmanuel. The fire department weighed in. I mean, maybe that's a question as well, and maybe Waste Management can, weigh in on it. And I guess I would say that if there's no particular positive resolution of it, then I would vote to eliminate the parking. But at this point, I think it's waiting 30 days may be the best way to go, assuming we meet, whatever it is.
So would you like to make a motion to hold?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion to hold made by Mitch Fishman. Any comments on the motion by any member of Traffic Council or any city councilor? Ned?
Well, I think it might be useful to hear from the fire department, either perhaps attending a meeting or just getting some feedback. I think we have heard from city services that this is something that creates a problem for them, and they need to provide the city services. This is a public street, and I think to David's point, I don't think anyone at the city is approaching this with any sense of punishment or any kind of a punitive intent. It's about city services and public safety. But I think it would be fine to hold this and revisit it.
Any other comments? I think one option is to hold this item, see what happens next, re-notify the street, put it on another traffic council meeting. We do have a very long backlog of items, by the way, waiting to be heard. But we also don't want to rush it. We want to make sure we do it right. Another option could be to approve the item, see if it gets appealed within the next 20 days. If the residents feel strongly enough, they could appeal the item. And if that's the case, the item would be heard at, like I said, at Public Safety and Transportation Committee. And I'm sure that they would be at that point wanting to hear from the fire department anyway. So to me, that's the preferable option. but I'm one vote. So any other comments? Mitch?
Again, I just think one of the objectives of the traffic council is not to put residents through undue confrontation and hardship and showing up at meetings and going through appeals. And I think holding it for a limited time and outreaching to the fire department, to city services, I think is a more responsible way of approaching it to me.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Captain Devine?
I agree with Mitch. It seems like we're doing a lot of harm to the neighbors on the street. Let's hold it for another month, see what the fire department says, all the other, and then we'll review it again.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be holding it for a month. We have so many other items that are waiting to be heard. This is going to probably have to wait for several months before it comes back up again. Other comments? Okay. So Danielle, can you call the roll on the motion to hold?
Mr. Kosis,
No.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Captain Devine,
Yes.
Mr. Cod.
Yes.
Okay, that's 3-1. Mr. Kosis opposed, and the item is held.
Thank you. Just hold on one second. Okay, so this item was voted 3-1 to hold. So this is frozen until the next time that it comes up to a traffic council agenda. Everyone will be notified again in advance of that meeting. And in the meantime, we're going to hope to get additional information, especially from the fire department. Maybe we'll even try to figure out a way to do a movie like the previous item that we handled, to see, maybe get a little bit more information about what happens with fire trucks when a car is parked there, and get their opinion. Mitch?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think to, again, whatever the process is, to outreach to city services to see if, an accommodation could be made that maybe wouldn't work 100% of the time, but could work most of the time, not extenuating circumstances, storms, or, the delay of one day or whatever it is, but would work most of the time, and see if they're willing to try that out. And as I said, maybe it's a trial basis that we come up with, but we could leave that for when it comes up again.
Yeah, very good. So in the meantime, I'll reach out to Juanita. I'll reach out to the fire department. I don't know what they'll say. They might say that they'll just, get through somehow. That's probably what they'll say, but we'll wait and see. So Ned.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that, the public safety issue is I think an absolute threshold issue. It is possible that the fire department says, yes, we'll looking at the conditions here, we can get through. We'll make sure to get through in that unusual circumstance. For city services, I think we need to figure out a way that we can deliver city services and without compromising what city staff and contractors need to do. I think we can be, however, open to taking the public testimony here tonight into account in figuring out the best way to achieve that.
Yeah, I would like to talk to, for all I know, Juanita might say, okay, just everyone bring out all your barrels to Parker Street from now on. Or
yeah, we'll talk to Juanita. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay, so this item is held. We're going to move on to the next item. Thank you all for this discussion. And we'll see you again at a future meeting. And we're going to move on now to TC 1625. This is Sonia Kerwile, 203 Lake Avenue, and Dan DeVillager, I think, 7 Norman Road, requesting a change to the parking regulations on Norman Road, including restricted parking between Memorial Day and Labor Day on Norman Road, and a review and possible restrictions near the corner of Norman Road and Lakewood Road. So again, we'll do the presentation, then we're going to open it up for public comment. Okay, so here is Norman Road in the red rectangle, very close to Crystal Lake. Here's a view of Norman Road looking from Lakewood Road to the south. You notice that there's a new sign that was posted recently right there. I blew it up, and so there's now a sign that says no parking here to corner. So clearing out this area close to Lakewood Road. The street is 23 feet wide, but mostly 24 feet wide along most of the street. So between 23 and 24 feet wide. Here is a view of Norman Road looking to the north. So we're from Hyde Street looking to the north and with the 24-foot wide street. So the current regulations on this street, on this 24-foot wide street, are no parking on the east side and a 2-hour limit, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the west side, except Saturday, Sundays, and holidays. There is this one sign that is posted. It's been there for a long time. It looks like it's not an official city sign. I think it says something like parking limit 30 minutes. So that sign, I don't know how it got there, how long it's been there. It's not a correct sign. It's not an official sign. It will be removed. Here is a view of Lakewood Road. So this is Norman Road to your left. This is Lakewood Road. So the traffic superintendent, who's been working here for many, many years, 30 years, and myself, we did go to take a look upon request whether parking should be restricted in this area. We both came to the conclusion that where this car is parked, because of the shape of the curve, right here is adequate. So no change is recommended on Lakewood Road itself. I did collect data. I went there maybe 10 times, it looks like, on pretty warm days in the past couple weeks, a few before Memorial Day, and then after Memorial Day, just to count the number of cars that are parked on Norman Road. So what I found just from these observations, and I know we're not into the majority of the summer yet, right? Some days, very few cars parked there. Some days, I mean, there's construction that's happening to at least one house in this neighborhood. So there were construction vehicles. It seemed to me to be mostly construction vehicles. On some of these days, the one day last week where it was very, very hot, 94 degrees, that one day, that day that our air conditioning went out, of course, I did go over there and I saw 9 cars parked on that street. So I know that further into the summer, there's even more than 9 cars that are parked on that street, but this is just the data that I collected up until now. So things to consider for this request. So again, the request is to keep, this is a 24-foot wide street, wide enough to allow parking at least on one side. Some streets that are 24-foot wide in Newton have parking on both sides. Things to consider. Yes, during peak times in the summer, on hot summer days, a lot of non-residents park on Norman Road. It does cause inconvenience to the residents. Behaviors that we've heard about, just difficulties for residents who live on the street. Although it's inconvenient in the summer, on hot summer days especially, this is a public street. Parking happens on public streets throughout the city for all sorts of reasons, to provide access on the public streets to the public for various reasons. You know, I think about Hull Street right next to Newton North High School. Every school day throughout the year, that whole street, public street, is parked end to end with students who are attending Newton North High School. I think of Chase Street over by Newton Center. There's a 2-hour limit on one side, I think, of Chase Street, no parking on the other. Parked all the time by people who want to go to Newton Center for an appointment or for whatever reason, to go for a meal. Very busy parking on that street, and it goes on and on. Paul Street over by, I think, Weeks Park over there. A lot of parking to be able to use the public amenity, over there. There's many examples, Wheeler Road over by Newton South, right? Filled up on, with those soccer fields right there. We used to go there, all those side streets completely filled up on soccer. These are, just even in my neighborhood in Newton, a lot of parking on streets near my neighborhood for local businesses. So I think I'm saying in this case, we have the amenity that people want to use, and it's not so different from many, many other streets in Newton where the public wants to be able to park on a public street to be able to use a great resource. And it's a 24-foot wide street. Parking is only allowed on one side right now for 2 hours. It is a wide enough street to allow parking on one side. I did reach out to our Parks and Rec Commission, went over this slide with Nicole Banks from Parks and Rec before, in advance of this meeting. Crystal Lake is defined in our state laws as a great pond. And because of that, the designation, we're required as a city to make Crystal Lake available to all inhabitants of the Commonwealth. So parking on Norman Road and on other streets is a way to allow access for visitors to be able to come and enjoy Crystal Lake and the surrounding parks. We did talk about, is there a potential to think more holistically about parking on the streets in the neighborhood? Maybe there is. We do have the bathhouse parking lot. There might be some changes or some improvements to maximize parking in that lot. So what else can I say? I think that the Parks and Rec Commission does encourage people to bicycle, to get dropped off. Of course, many people will still drive and need to park in the neighborhood. I wanted to give this example. This came to Traffic Council, I think it was within the past year or two, Allerton Road. Let me go back and see if it's on the map. Yeah. Okay, so here's the bathhouse over here. Here's Norman Road, and then Allerton Road is right here. So I remember, and so it's also very close, to the lake and to the bathhouse. Allerton Road residents came to Traffic Council a couple months, maybe it was only a year ago, and they had no parking on one side, just like Norman Road, and a 2-hour limit, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. in their case, on the other side. And so they came to Traffic Council. They did not ask to remove the parking during the summer. They said that the 2-hour limit for them isn't long enough, and they want to be able to park on their own street longer than 2 hours. So we discussed that, and Traffic Council decided to make a change we sort of added this line on the bottom, and we kept the 2-hour limit for the public to be able to share Allerton Road as a public way, but then we allowed an override for the residents who live on Allerton Road to be able to park longer than 2 hours. So, they could park their cars all day on Allerton Road if they want to, or for their visitors, they were happy with that solution. So I think that we should consider a similar change for Norman Road to keep the 2-hour limit on the one side, but then offer the opportunity to the residents who live on Norman Road to park longer than the 2-hour limit. So that is the option that I'm recommending at this point. I don't think that we should be eliminating parking on a public way. I just don't think that that's good policy. I understand the concerns about behaviors of the people who are parking there and trying to enjoy the lake. But from a point of view of traffic council, we should be, I think, focusing on safety. And is it wide enough to allow parking on one side for 2 hours for the vehicles, or longer maybe for the residents? So that is my recommendation, I guess, not approve the item as requested, but to consider keeping the 2-hour limit, but giving it an override for the residents who abut the street. So that is my, and of course, just like any other item, if we do vote and the residents strongly disagree with the vote of this council, there is the opportunity to appeal the vote. This is not the last step. Normally, we don't get very many appeals, maybe none or one or every year, but that is the way that the process works. We do have that opportunity for the residents. So I'm going to end now. I'm going to open it up for public comment. The first hand I saw was Stephen Grossberg. If you could unmute yourself and maybe say your address or your street for the record. And you're still muted, Mr. Grossberg. You have to unmute so we could hear you. You have to find the unmute button. So, Mr. Grossberg, you have to unmute. Oh, I don't know what happened.
He's not unmuting. I don't even know if he can hear you, David.
I think he's left the meeting. I don't see him.
No, he's still here.
Okay. So, Mr. Grossberg, you need to find the icon that says mute, because I don't know if you can hear me, but we cannot hear you. So I'm going to move on to the next person, and maybe you can try and find the mute button and unmute yourself, and then we can call on you. So the next hand that I see is Dan. And can you pronounce your last name and give us your address?
Yeah, Dave Leaguer. It's I'm on Norman Road, 7 Norman Road, and the mute button is in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. You speak about safety. What about the safety of people at 3 a.m. parking and going swimming in the lake and coming back drunk, and the broken bottles and things like that that litter the neighborhood?
I don't think this is really a back and forth, but I think that what I said before was I don't think that this is a traffic parking issue. It might be a behavior issue.
Yeah, but you mentioned your responsibility is safety, and I find that there's no lifeguard, there's no responsibility of anyone in the city watching these areas, and all hours of the night there's activity in this area of the lake that's unenforced. If you want to make it some destination, you need to add some additional coverage for cleaning up the trash, patrolling the area at night.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, I think you unmuted now, Mr. Grossberg.
Well,
yes, we can hear you now.
I couldn't unmute myself. I got a message letting me unmute.
Okay, did you?
At the other end of 50 years at 50 Hyde Street. And if you go to the corner of Hyde and Norman Road, and you go down Norman in the direction from the lake to Hyde, even today, cars park to the very end of Norman Road, so much so that a car that's going from the Norman Road who wants to make a turn right or left on Hyde simply cannot see traffic coming from the right. And all too often, cars coming down Hyde Street will speed on the Norman Road. And I would just say, if we haven't had a fatality yet in a car or a person crossing the street, it's just out of good luck. I would recommend that maybe 5 or 10 feet from the end of Norman Road in the direction of Hyde Street, have no parking at any time. In fact, what you're talking about, moving it up Norman Road, is probably going to exacerbate the problem. So today,
I think that that's a really good point. If you remove cars from one street, it doesn't mean that they're not going to go to Crystal Lake anymore. It just means that they're going to find another street to park on.
well, today, for example, there were cars squeezed to the very end of Norman Road, practically abutting Hyde Street. No one could see coming from Hyde to Norman or Norman to Hyde if there was anyone coming on the other street. I think it's a clear and present danger. You know,
Right.
even just 5-10 feet, I don't know what the setback usually is, but if there is one, no one is obeying it. Let's put it that way.
Right. And so I just want to make it clear that the city does have administrative authority to be able to restrict parking near an intersection within 50 feet, as a matter of fact. So that is exactly what happened here in this slide. We had a request from a nearby resident, to restrict parking near the intersection. That did not need to be approved through traffic council. If it's within up to 50 feet of the corner, we were able to post the no parking here to corner side sign administratively. So that's the sign that we did recently post on the side of Norman Road near Lakewood. We could do the same thing on the other end to clear out the intersection near Hyde Street without any traffic council vote. That would just be based on engineering judgment by our traffic.
That would be very helpful. Do I have to make a formal appeal?
We have it. I'm going to write it down and then discuss it among staff who have I guess the qualifications to make that determination.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Let me just write that down. That also, so we're going to be doing that. That is the kind of request that could be entered into our City 311 system on the city webpage. If you go to the city webpage, newtonma.gov, that is exactly the kind of request that could be made, requesting a no parking right near the intersection of Hyde Street and Norman Road. That would be routed automatically to the right staff person and handled administratively. But you don't need to do that because I wrote it down, and we'll do that without going through the 311 process. The next hand I see, Janice. I can't see your whole last name here. Janice Bork. And Janice Bork, if you could unmute. Okay. I'm not sure if you could hear me or I can't see you. But why don't we move on, and why don't you try to unmute if you can. You have to find the mute button. It's maybe in the lower left corner of the screen, or maybe if you hover above your name on the little box, you'll see something that says mute or unmute. So you can try and do that. But in the meantime, let's move on to Sonia Kurzweil. And if you could unmute and then say your address or your street for the record.
I'm 203 Lake Ave at the corner of Norman and Lakewood.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're right there across
Right.
from Norman.
My driveway is sort of the continuation of Norman Road. uh, well, two things. I hope we're still considering that intersection at Norman and Lakewood for no parking here to corner because as Stephen was describing, and as you know, on Norman Road to Lakewood, the parking is just bumper to bumper right around the curb there. And that car is pretty close to the intersection too. People don't know where the no parking here to corner is. They're just, the calculation of it could vary from person to person, depending on where you start, exactly what the guidelines are. So I hope we're still monitoring that. I was going to help you collect some data on that. And, hopefully we can come back to that and make a determination there. Certainly no parking here to corner on Norman that was placed has been very helpful. So, thank you so much. That I think has been very helpful. You can't see obviously around the intersection if it's all parked up like that, no matter what direction you're coming from. But just on the question of, helping to relieve the suffering of neighbors during the summer months where we have so much traffic here, so many parked cars to weave around. I mean, it is a two-way street, and when it's apparently it's a relatively wide street for Newton standards. But if you've got two-way traffic and 12, 15 cars parked there, it gets a little dicey. So that's a problem. And the trash, the noise, the public changing, and the nighttime activity. It's just getting worse and worse. I've lived here for 45 years and I've seen a lot of changes. And this last 5 years, the last few years, it's just increasing, to a point where we just really don't feel that as safe as we certainly once did. So the other thing related is that there are several other streets in the neighborhood. Laurel, I'm sure you don't want me bringing these up after your, very passionate presentation on, parking around, attractions in Newton. But there are other streets that have had relief from, what we're talking about here. Laurel Street, Crystal, is it? A few others. So why are they getting it? And, why are we not able to, why do we not qualify in the same way that they do?
So is that a question for me?
Yes.
It's not a back and forth, but I could respond. So Crystal Street and Newberry Street came to Traffic Council because there were cars parked on both sides of both of those streets. And they came to Traffic Council. They did not ask to remove parking entirely from their streets. They asked to remove parking on one side of a 24-foot wide street to allow for emergency vehicles to get through. And I think that the Traffic Council members found that was a reasonable request. We were concerned about safety, just exactly the same discussion we had for Howley Avenue. We wanted
that's the case on both of those streets because
yeah. Parking is still allowed. And I think for Laurel Street, I think that was a mistake, and I think that it should be reconsidered. That's my opinion.
I thought one of those streets was just the same as Norman. No parking on one side and now restricted, seasonal parking on the other side now. I thought that was the case on Crystal, but that I'm not positive, but
I can take a moment. Let me see if I can do this. This might take a second for me. Yeah. agree. There's a lot of pages of restrictions.
Take a moment.
So on Crystal Street, for example, there's no parking between Memorial Day and Labor Day on the east side. There's no restriction on the west side. And right around the island, there's no parking on either side, only just right around the island. So almost the entirety of Crystal Street does have parking on one side. Unrestricted is not a 2-hour limit. It's all day. So I can look at Newberry Street, because I don't remember. So let me see what it says for Newberry Street. Nevada. So Newberry Street is prohibited. It sort of makes a bend, like an L-shaped Newberry Street. So on Newberry Street, there's no parking on the west and south side between Memorial Day and Labor Day, but there's no restriction on the east and north side. So Newberry Street and Crystal Street have parking on one side at all times, and actually on both sides the whole rest of the year, except between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So I can close that. And let me find the presentation again. Okay. Okay. And if you want to continue your comments, just unmute Ms. Kurzweil. Otherwise, we'll go to Janice Bork. And I see that you've unmuted now, right? So you can go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you. So I live at 238 Lincoln Street, right down by the Elliott T-stop, and I'm co-president of the Crystal Lake Conservancy. So we obviously understand the pressure that is put on the neighborhood around the lake during the summertime. And we do think that there needs to be availability, because the parking lot is very limited with only 24 spaces and probably will not be able to be increased. So there's a very limited amount of space in that lot. So we do feel that parking should be allowed on the streets, but that there should be some accommodation. I do like the idea of the gentleman who said the other end of Norman Street, definitely having a setback so people can see is really important. I like the idea of adding the except by resident, like Allerton did, which is parked on both sides of the street. And then certainly shortening that up on the Hyde Norman side would reduce a certain number of cars, maybe 1 or 2 cars on that end. I'm not sure what the maximum can be with the no parking from here to corner on both ends, but that would shorten up the number of cars because it can only be on one side. There is, I understand the nighttime pressure, again, that goes with the neighbors in that area. That is a policing issue. And something that in terms of checking on the parks aren't supposed to be used at nighttime. I mean, that is really something that the city really needs to address. And I'm not sure that they really are, but I'm not sure that's traffic can control that, other than saying, well, if there's no parking, therefore no cars will park there and we won't have anyone at 3 a.m. in the morning. Though that's an interest, you can understand that, but I like this plan of 2-hour parking, one side, both limits on other end of the side. And I do think, David, to your point, I think being consistent with all the streets and making sure that it's fair and spreading the burden around the streets. Laurel Street, I never quite understood why that happened. Certainly that street is wide enough to take on one-sided, parking on one side of the street. And it was a very popular street at one point, but overparked on both sides. So I guess I'm in support of making some of those accommodations. But I think the minute you start getting into no parking at all, you're going to have all the other streets stepping right up and saying, I want no parking at all on my street and my street. And then I think you have a real challenge in front of you, because how do you justify one street over another? This way, everyone, it would be fair, consistent, still provide some parking for visitors to Crystal Lake, but also try to mitigate the impact on the neighborhood.
Thank you very much. I definitely appreciate all those comments. I would say that I do remember the whole Laurel Street discussion at Traffic Council several years ago. I did not vote to make that change personally, but the majority did, and that's the situation on Laurel Street now. Our division does handle parking tickets and parking ticket appeals and hearings. And I do remember 2 times that residents of Laurel Street did get a ticket for parking on their own street, and they, were not happy about that. If we do put in parking restrictions on Norman, it affects the residents of Norman too. All these construction vehicles that are parked there right now after Memorial Day would not be able to park there to provide service to the houses on the street. I don't know that that's a good thing either for the residents of the street to not have parking for construction or services. This is just my point of view. I see Sonia. Would you like to make another comment if you can unmute? Sonia Kurzweil.
Yeah. Working people have always had a pass on, the parking restrictions. I don't think that's really a problem. And there, as it is right now, that there is some inequity with a couple of the streets, as you've described, being one way and Laurel being another. But I mean, I completely support what the people on Laurel and that change. The cars would be more distributed if there was parking, no parking on one side. And we do have a majority of the, abutters here that have requested it, this way. So they're not complaining about, the restriction and wanting to have more parking on their street. They're not, they're not complaining about it.
Thank you. Other comments from the public on this before we close the public comment period? See, there's other people here at the meeting. If anyone else wants to make a comment about this item, just raise your hand. I don't see any. So I would thank everybody for the comments that have been made, and I'll turn it back over to the members of Traffic Council or the city councilors that are on this call. Any comments? Any thoughts by anybody? Mitch.
My memory is not as good as yours, but I do think the Laurel thing was a outlier, and I think your solution, which seems to be, the Allerton Road solution, sounds terrific. I think that's a good way to approach it.
Thank you. Ned?
Yeah, I appreciate your point about the kind of the designation of Crystal Lake. Is it a great pond? Is that right?
Yeah.
I love that. And you know, that it really is a resource for you know, all the residents of the Commonwealth, but you know, realistically, it's I'm sure used overwhelmingly by Newton residents. And you know, I think that it's important for us to you know, share those resources. You know, and I think that, you know, making sure that we're establishing parking regulations that preserve public safety, you know, using the administrative power of the administrative regulation to make sure that we have good sight lines, and we're keeping you know, preserving traffic safety, and making accommodations to your point and to Mitch's point for residents. I think that's a you know, a kind of a good balance.
Thank you, Ned. All right, Sonia Kurzweil, last comment. If you could unmute.
So does this mean when you're adding by permit, do you have to go through a whole permitting? Yeah, that sign there. Yeah, so are you starting a whole permit kind of process here to deal with the parking issues?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking that question. So we do have streets around the city. Some of them are within a village. We have different villages that have parking programs, parking permit programs. And we have streets sort of sprinkled around that have come through traffic council, or before there even was a traffic council, through the Board of Aldermen at the time, that requested resident permit parking. So this whole program is ongoing. If you live on a street in Newton that is resident permit, like a 2-hour limit except by resident permit, then what you would do is you would, you know, go to the traffic bureau in the police station in West Newton. You'd show proof that you are on a butter of that street. So in this case, let me go back. So in this case, the abutters of Norman Road are, you know, not across on the other side, but everyone that has frontage on Norman Road, even if their address might be on Hyde Street, if there's still frontage on Norman Road, they would be eligible to go to the traffic bureau, show proof of address, get, they are entitled to 2 free visitor placards, which are transferable, cardboard placards that they can give their guests, and they would just, you know, put it in their windshield, on their dash, and they would be able to park for longer than the 2 hours. The parking control would see that and not issue the ticket, or they could buy stickers for their vehicles. They're $25 a year right now, and they would just, you know, they wouldn't have to remember to put the cardboard placard on, and they just have their sticker for the year, and they would be able to park as long as they want, except for the winter overnight parking ban, unless that goes away, right? They would be able to park for longer than the posted restriction. The only hesitation I have, and this is really a question for Captain Devine, is that I know that we've been adding more and more of these sort of 2-hour limits, except by resident permit, due to the popularity of this program on streets all across the city. People want to be able to use their street longer than 2 hours. They find it inconvenient that they can't park there longer than 2 hours. So whenever, you know, we've been doing this more and more, adding the resident permit override. But I am just a little bit concerned that it's great for the residents generally, but for the traffic bureau, it does cause more work for issuing the permits. And I just want to make sure, one more time. I think I ask you this every time, probably, but there's still enough capacity within the traffic bureau to add in, other streets moving forward to have a resident permit? So I guess that's a question if you're still here, Captain Devine. I'm not sure if you're here. Oh, I see you now. Did you hear that question, Captain Devine?
No, I stepped away to.
Oh, okay. I was just asking about the capacity of the traffic bureau to issue resident permits. There would be, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 eligible addresses that would now be able to get a placard. I mean, 8 is not going to be an undue burden, but just moving forward, how are we doing in terms of adding more streets to resident permit?
No, we can certainly add one more street if that's what you think is best.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion? And again, I want to remind everyone one more time that if we do approve this language to keep the 2-hour limit, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., but then add in the resident permit override. If the residents are strongly disagreeing, there is the 20-day appeals period, which would transfer this discussion to Public Safety and Transportation Committee of City Council. Mitch.
So I would make that motion as you've described it.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. So we have a motion to approve the language on slide 40, which would keep everything how it is with the 2-hour limit, but then add in resident permit override, just like we see on Allerton Road. I think it's important, this language where it says, that it's a 2-hour limit except Saturday, Sundays, and holidays, or by resident permit. So it would be the same thing. So that motion's been made. Any last comments? Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
and Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0, TPR 986.
986. Thank you all very much. I hope this helps the residents. And again, we have the 20-day appeals period. I appreciate everybody's comments. And we're going to move on to the next item, which is TC 2325. Ned Codd, Director of Transportation for DPW, requesting to install a traffic signal at the eastbound/westbound Washington Street merge to the Center Avenue Bridge in Newton Corner. The new traffic signal would comprise one signal control point for 2 Washington Street westbound lanes continuing onto the Center Avenue Bridge southbound, and a complementary signal control point for 2 Washington Street eastbound lanes continuing onto the Center Avenue Bridge southbound. All right, so we have this presentation. I know Ned is here. Would it be okay for you to do this presentation and just let me know when to forward the slides?
Sure.
Okay, here's the first slide.
Thank you. So this is basically part of the Newton Corner safety improvements that the city has been working on with MassDOT. If you all recall, back in the fall, MassDOT implemented a new traffic signal at the intersection of Center Street and the eastbound Mass Turnpike off-ramp and the sort of rotary Center Avenue Bridge coming over the pike. And what that does is it eliminates what was a a very dangerous and high crash weave of the sort of the rotary traffic across the off-ramp traffic, trying to get to Center Street. It controls those two traffic streams and makes them take turns. And that has actually generally worked out pretty well. We are pretty happy with how that worked out. People were very unhappy when it was first implemented, but it is our judgment that was because right when MassDOT finished that project, National Grid began doing a bunch of gas utility work in the intersection and closing lanes of the rotary during rush hour, even though we asked them to please not do that. But since National Grid is finished, that has been working very well. And a sort of a companion project is the signalization of the two Washington Street traffic streams, eastbound and westbound, coming into the rotary, coming to the bridge. David, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah, you can see it here. It's the merge going right at the triangular island in front of Honda Village. When MassDOT implemented the new signal, they actually restriped this, which improved this. Prior to the MassDOT work, you had two lanes coming from each direction, and it was pretty poorly controlled. And the sort of the inside lanes of the two approaches were really coming into the same lane, which was pretty chaotic and dangerous. And that was also a high crash location. David, if you go to the next slide.
Yep. Yeah, this, like you said, this is an old photo. I just didn't feel safe standing there and taking a photo of the current layout. But let's go on. Go ahead. This is the next slide.
So this is what we and MassDOT are proposing to implement, is controlling the two directions of Washington Street, eastbound and westbound, having signal control. What that does, first of all, is right now pedestrians cannot walk along the southern sidewalk of Washington Street. They're stopped right where David's cursor is, because there's no safe way to cross currently with those traffic streams being uncontrolled. So pedestrians will now be able to cross over to the hotel and toward the other side of the rotary. And what it will also do is it will require the two traffic streams, again, sort of to take turns, so that as they come into the rotary, come to the bridge, they're not directly in conflict. one traffic stream will get the green light, and they'll be able to move onto the bridge and fill in, and approach the Center Street traffic signal. Meanwhile, pedestrians will be able to cross the other approach, and then, the signal will change and it'll flip. Pedestrians can cross the other side, and the other traffic stream will have the opportunity to, fill in and approach the signal at Center Street. What this will also do, folks who travel through this intersection now will know that the eastbound approach coming from Church Street is currently reduced to a single lane. It will be widened to a 2-lane approach, so that each approach will have 2 lanes of traffic that can release when their signal turns green. So we expect, so basically the benefits of that will be that it will improve pedestrian access, and it will improve traffic safety by eliminating that sort of merging and weaving conflict of those 2 traffic streams flowing freely.
Thank you, Ned. And this is the language that we would be voting on, to add these 2 signals at these 2 locations. So now I'm just going to open it up for public comment. If anyone from the public has a comment, if you can raise your hand. Anyone wish to speak on this? No? Okay. Mitch.
Yeah, Ned, thanks for your presentation. So let me just understand it. So the pedestrian crossing, it's hard to read, the small print, but that's the full crossing to Washington Street, right? It takes you from one side to the other, right?
Yeah, and so pedestrians will cross, one approach, travel through the triangle, and then cross the other approach.
Okay.
The crosswalk doesn't go all the way across Washington Street. It's for crossing to the island and then back over to continue to the hotel. Right?
I see.
I think
that's correct. There is not a new signal or a new crosswalk to the north side, but you can go over to the hotel, and then you can cross over by Buff's Pub at Peabody Street.
So, okay. I mean, I have to say some of it I don't understand. I was hoping to look in the field a little bit more. But so the question I have is, and I understand the either or be similar to the Center Street alternative, where you come off, one can take a direct right on the center, the other one then waits for the other 2 lanes other single lane to make that right turn. What would you say is the amount of timing, given the fact that the crosswalk will be active at the same time that the signal will stop? Is that a 1 or 2 minute delay? Is that very variable throughout the day? How does actually all that work with the pedestrian crossing?
So we will work with MassDOT on the exact timing, but it'll be a 2-phase signal, which means that traffic will be flowing from one direction or the other at all times. So that it's not like an exclusive pedestrian phase where all the traffic stops.
So my question is, during congested periods, particularly, I guess it could be in the morning, but certainly the afternoon, will this cause backup onto Washington Street towards exit 17?
It should not cause any more backup. In fact, it'll probably be less than the sort of the existing signals at Peabody and at Bacon Street.
So you think it'll be less, but you don't actually have the numerical or estimated change at this point?
So I don't anticipate that this will really add any noticeable additional delay, because during morning and afternoon peaks, there's already some delay associated with waiting at the Center Street signal. So this effectively meters traffic. So it stops them before they would be stopping downstream anyway.
So does the pedestrian crossing that automatically is open when the cars are stopped in either of the directions?
Yes.
And that's reflected in a signal, walk signal of some sort?
Yes, there'll be walk signal with and I believe MassDOT will be installing countdown signals.
Okay. So this is an approved project, right?
Yes, MassDOT has agreed to install this.
So the only adjustments are the ones that you're going to work out with them in terms of how the timing works, and presumably after you put it in, there'll be some further adjustments, maybe.
Yes.
So is that Center Street one that's been in operation since the fall? Has that improved backup from the Turnpike? I don't know what exit number that is, but coming inbound on Boston?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Any other comments from anybody from the public or members of traffic council or city councilors? Okay, seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the item as docketed.
So we have a motion made by Ned. This would be TPR 987 to approve the language shown on slide 45 to add the two signals, Washington Street at Center Avenue eastbound and westbound. Any last comments? Okay. Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0 TPR 987.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next item. Okay, so we do have the appeals deadline. I think this is going to be installed pretty soon anyway. TC 2425, Ned Cod, Transportation Director of DPW, requesting to add a no turn on red sign on Commonwealth Avenue eastbound at Hammond Street. Ned, did you want to do this one, or should I, or which is your preference?
I can present it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Wait, are we at
so this is Commonwealth Avenue.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes. So this is the intersection of Comm Ave and Hammond Street with it's kind of a large intersection with large signalized intersection with Wachusett Road coming in kind of from the southwest, kind of makes essentially a 5-legged intersection. And I was out here probably a month or two ago, and I observed someone at the who had a red light on Comm Ave inbound, and they proceeded to turn right on red onto Hammond Street across Wachusett, and I concluded that was an unsafe movement, and talked about it with David, and we decided to docket a no turn on red, sort of on the far side of the intersection, far side on the right, to imply that there is no turn on red onto Hammond Street, which, given that you're crossing over a whole other leg of the intersection, David thought that should be perfectly clear, but I think it was not clear to the person who did it. So I believe it is a reasonable safeguard to implement. Excuse me.
And here's the language that we would be voting on. So thank you very much, Ned. Jesse, if you could unmute and just say your address or your street for the record.
So, my name is Jesse Corey. I live at 64 Oak Cliff Road. In regards to this item, I had actually learned several years ago that making this right turn on red actually is illegal, regardless of whether there's a sign, because of the fact that you have to cross a whole leg of the intersection. And so I do support this no turn on red sign going in. But I also want to point out that no turn on red signs are signs that are commonly disobeyed the most.
Thank you for that comment, Jesse. Karen Wanger, if you can unmute.
I just wanted to second what Jesse just said very eloquently. This is a no-brainer in my opinion. I also want to point out on the north side that a lot of people kind of use the carriage lane to turn on red northbound on Hammond. That's also a risky situation, but I guess that's not what's discussed today. But thank you.
You mean south? Is it southbound? People
So
southbound and then
sorry, on the north. So people traveling westbound on Comm Ave kind of hop onto the carriage lane and then make a right onto Hammond Street. And that's also without necessarily stopping, and that seems also dangerous. But I'm all for no turn on red anywhere, everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on this? Mitch.
So just a question, where would the stop sign go in this photograph, or do you have another one?
Well, so it's actually, Traffic Council does not vote. We don't have jurisdiction on the exact location of where the signs are going to go. We have our traffic superintendent, who I mentioned previously, with many years of experience. She decides after we vote the exact proper location for the sign. I don't know if Ned might have a recommendation. Otherwise, Nina will I mean, our traffic superintendent will figure that out.
But it's on the far corner, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, it would have to be, clearly for Hammond Street.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it looks like there's a utility pole, there's a signal post. There are places that we can definitely place the no turn on red sign. Karen, I believe that for the westbound, I see what you're saying, and that is, an unsafe movement. Excuse me, it appears that there is a no turn on red sign for the westbound traffic. So that is a regulation that's in effect, at least in my street view.
Karen, you can unmute.
Okay, yeah. There is a no turn on red when you're on Com Ave, but not on the carriage lane sign. So what I'm saying is people just weave into the carriage lane at the previous intersection and then anticipate that red light and make that turn at sometimes higher speed than necessary. So it's just in the carriage lane that there is no sign.
Okay. So would anyone like to make a motion for approval? I could go ahead and make that motion unless someone else wants to.
I move approval of the item as docketed.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the language as shown on slide 49. This would be TPR 988.
Yes.
Any last comments? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Danielle, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kosis.
Aye.
Mr. Fishman.
Aye.
Captain Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0, TPR 988.
Thank you. So our next item is TC 2525, Adrian Ayala, Transportation Engineer, requesting to add a left lane must turn left restriction from Walnut Street southbound onto Homer Street eastbound. So again, here's the location that we're talking about, Walnut Street at Homer Street and Fenno Road. Again, before Adrian left, he did this striping plan to change the bicycle lane striping along this section of Walnut Street. Here's the new plan. You could see this is traveling on Walnut Street southbound, right? Here's Commonwealth Avenue. So traveling southbound, we see the parking is still there. And then you see this brand new left turn pocket is being proposed in this striping plan. So you could get into the left, have an exclusive left onto Fenno Road or Homer Street. So we docketed this for Traffic Council because our traffic and parking regulations actually has a little section where we're supposed to be listing all of the areas in the city where we have a left lane must turn left. And that is a new one right here. So that is what is being proposed in the striping plan, what will be implemented. And so I guess I'll just go ahead and make the motion to approve this item, TC 2525. That would be for TC 989 to add the left lane must turn left. And I want to just see if there's any comments from the public before we vote. Any comments? If you could raise your hand. Seeing none, Danielle, can you call the, oh, I do see there is someone, Emily FEIG. If you could unmute and say your address or your street, please.
Yeah, hi. I am at 41 Fenno Road. I have no problem with this left turn lane, but we on Fenno especially have noticed a lot of issues at this intersection with, I think like with right turn on red, or people making a right on red at multiple of the corners. I think the crosswalks are kind of hard to see, and we've had some close calls trying to cross the street on foot.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Do you mean coming down Fenno Road and turning right onto Walnut Street?
Specifically, and maybe Neil can chime in too. He lives on Fenno as well. But is it the right from Walnut onto Homer? Is that sorry, I'm having trouble looking at this picture and
because it's this is sort of turned on its side.
I think it's the right. Or no, I'm sorry. It's people coming on Homer.
City Hall's on the bottom of the screen.
Okay, it's people coming on Homer. Turn by the library, turning right southbound onto Walnut.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's an exclusive right turn lane right there.
Right.
And then
So
I think the left
crosswalk
lane is
button, it's a crosswalk for the whole entire intersection, and then people will zip around that corner.
So is your comment that you would like to change the regulations? I don't know if there's a no turn on red sign on Homer Street. That would be a separate docketed item that someone might be interested in docketing for a future traffic council meeting.
Yeah, I guess that would be to add a no right on red there, at least at minimum. But I realize that's a separate thing, but just thought I'd pipe up since it was the same intersection.
Yeah, and if you feel strongly enough for that, then it would need to be docketed and put onto a traffic council agenda presentation like this. So it would be docketed either by contacting a city councilor or a member of traffic council, or by collecting signatures of nearby residents. So it first needs to be docketed, and then we would be able to move forward. But we can't vote on something that's not actually been specifically docketed and notified. So thank you for that. And then Neil Harrington.
Hey guys, first appreciate the work you guys do. I know this is a thankless job. This left turn, it's going to cause more confusion in this intersection. This intersection's a mess. Where you're not solving the problem with this intersection, you're putting lipstick on a pig. That's going to cause a left-hand turn. Is going to cause people to turn left onto Fenno when they want to go left onto Homer. We see it all the time with the current outlay of the intersection. And if we're actually doing a study of this intersection, let's solve some problems. You've got a 5-point intersection here. One of those lanes is going into a residential neighborhood. It's a difficult crosswalk. I know some of my neighbors wouldn't want to be called the name, but we have elderly neighbors that have trouble getting across the intersection with the amount of time that the crosswalk lets them. And as Emily said, people turning southbound onto Walnut from Homer by the library. I know this is a different issue altogether. It's like playing Frogger. And you think about the people that are going to the library, people with strollers, a lot of elderly, as I said, going there. It's not a safe intersection, and adding a lane is not doing anything for the safety of the pedestrians in that intersection. Look at that picture. You can't go straight across if you're heading north on the eastbound side of Walnut. So us focusing on a left-hand turn is not solving the overarching issues of this intersection. And so, whether you want to put the left-hand turn, you're going to add more cars going onto Fenno that don't mean to be turning onto Fenno, and you're not solving any of the pedestrian issues that the intersection is currently facing. And I apologize, I'm outside. I'm actually with my neighbors. We're doing our quarterly poker night, but had to join the call.
Thank you very much for that comment, Mr. Harrington. Jesse Corey.
So I want to point out that making a left turn from Walnut Street southbound onto either Homer Street or Fenno Road is not safe if you're riding a bicycle. And so even though the striping plan doesn't specifically indicate it, I would suggest adding a two-stage left turn bicycle queue box in front of the left turn and straight combined lane on Homer Street going eastbound, we have one of those one of those left turn bike queue boxes for bikes in Newton Center going eastbound on Beacon Street that want to turn left onto Center Street.
Right. Thank you for that comment. Other comments from the public or from anybody on this item? Comments from members of Traffic Council? Mitch.
So, excuse me. I'm having trouble understanding how many lanes are there today, including both sides, and how many lanes will there be when this plan could be implemented?
And we don't have Adrian here. We do have Ned. I believe that there's 2 lanes southbound right now. We have the right turn lane, and then we have a lane that's a left or through. That's my memory, but Ned, you can correct me if that's wrong.
That is correct.
So we're able to take the left and through, and which if someone's turning left, no one can go. Everyone is stuck until that left turn vehicle has been able to make that left turn. With this plan, I think the improvement is that the through traffic would be able to continue, and the left turning traffic onto Fenno or Homer Street would have their own lane. Plus, I believe this is a safety improvement for bicyclists. That's the main benefit of this whole striping plan.
Yeah, tell me about the bicyclist. I don't understand that.
Okay, and we don't have Adrian here who designed it, but I don't know if Ned, do you know enough about this to comment?
Yes, Adrian did the drawing, but we developed the design together. So what this does is provides parking buffered bike lane in the southbound direction so that the southbound cyclists, rather than being between parked cars and a travel lane, they're able to be between parked cars and the curb, which is generally a safer approach. In the northbound direction, because the parking is next to residences, we decided to leave the parking curbside, but we were able to provide a painted buffer between the travel lane and the bicycle lane. So both of those things improve bicycle safety. And then at the Homer Street intersection, it is a pretty it's relatively wide. So we were able, by eliminating just 150 or so feet of parking, we were able to provide a left turn lane so that those left turns, as David said, are not blocking the through traffic, and that has the added safety benefit. Often, if there is a southbound vehicle on Walnut Street waiting to turn left onto Homer or Fenno, more often Homer, through vehicles will often sort of sneak around that queued vehicle and into the bicycle lane, hopefully checking for cyclists, but probably not always.
And then where's that 150 feet parking elimination? If you were to put your cursor somewhere, where would that be?
Yeah, Mitch, that's the next item.
I understand that, but look, I mean,
it's right here.
Yeah,
Right.
I just wanted to, and then the final. So you have left turn arrows in the other direction onto Homer, and this will be a left turn arrow at the same time onto Homer going toward Newton Center, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So overall, it's a safety improvement for, for motorists, and for primarily bicyclists. You can see we already have this parking here. It's just being pushed further away from the curb so that we have a protected bike lane for the bicyclists.
Thank you.
Yep. Other comments? Okay. Then I would like to make a motion to approve this language, to approve this item as docketed. The language on slide 53, this would be TPR 989. And again, I want to highlight that if the neighbors strongly disagree with this change, we do have the appeals process. We have 20 days to appeal this traffic council vote. Any last comments? Okay, Danielle, can you please call the roll on this one?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved 4-0, TPR 989.
Thank you. And then I'm going to open the last two items together. It's TC 2925, Adrian Ayala, Transportation Engineer, requesting to prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from Fenno Road to a point 150 feet north of Fenno Road. And also TC 2625, Adrian Ayala, Transportation Engineer, requesting to prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from a point 590 feet north of Fenno Road to Commonwealth Avenue. So this is so for TC 2925, this is the location that we will be talking about removing a small section of parking in this red rectangle. This is the same striping plan. This right here is where that red rectangle is located, where the parking would be removed. You see this cross-hatched line that was removed, as Ned said, to improve this, provide room for the safety benefit of the left turn lane right there. So this is where the parking would be removed, a short stretch of Walnut Street. The parking would remain through the majority of Walnut Street. There's a lot of parking there. I've never seen it parked up. There's a lot of availability there. So the no parking here at any time sign would be posted approximately right there. And the recommendation for this item is to vote NAN to take no action for this item because we're just going to weave it into the next item with the same TPR language. So that would be TC 2625, and this is the end of the block. This is the area where parking would also be removed along Walnut Street. You can see it here in this slide. So the parking would be already removed down here, remain along the whole middle of this block, and then removed as you're getting closer to Walnut Street, to Commonwealth Avenue. And the no parking sign would be approximately in this location. So this is the language that we would be voting on to approve these changes for TC 2925 and TC 2625. And we have the 20-day appeals period. That is the presentation. I can open it up for any public comment at this point. And I see Alex, and I can't quite read your last name. You can unmute and say your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Alex Klabaner, and I live at 680 Walnut Street, which is the last house on Walnut Street on that block before ComHave.
Is it on the corner?
Yes.
No,
it's not
next to it.
right next to it. That one,
Next to
yeah.
the corner. Mm-hmm.
Right. The one at the corner, I think, has a Commonwealth address. And I'm here with my wife, Rachel Schiff, who may also have comments of her own. We've lived at this address since 2009 and are fairly familiar with the traffic patterns. And we asked that this part of the petition that deals with this end of the block be denied because it affects us adversely, and there are also safety issues. So first of all, we use that parking area quite a bit. That's by our house, particularly under the tree that's there. Yeah, that tree that's right in the middle there. That's the area that we use, our guests use, delivery trucks use, and if we have contractors visiting the house, like a plumber or something, that then they tend to park there because that's the closest area to our house. It doesn't appear that there's much that would be gained by moving the no parking a little bit further away from our house, but it would certainly inconvenience us. And then the safety issue has a lot to do with how we back out of our driveway and get into our driveway. Because particularly during rush hour, there's a backup at Walnut Street there. And now I also want to point out that there's a no turn on red sign that's been added to that corner. So what we have to do is we have to back out very slowly until we get into the line of sight of the cars coming on Walnut Street who want to try to make that light as quickly as they can. That's what they're concerned about, particularly during rush hour. And we need to kind of make sure that they see our car and give us space to back out so we could get on Walnut Street and then proceed from there. It's already very difficult to do. So we find that routinely, the vast majority of the time, if it's anywhere near rush hour, we have to wait a whole traffic cycle in order to get out of our driveway. And our concern is that this will make it that much more difficult. And because of the no turn on red, there might also be a backup because there are two lanes by that traffic light. One that's only turn left, and then one for through traffic and for right turn traffic. So most of that traffic is the through traffic and the right turn traffic onto Com Ave. So we're very concerned about it because as we're coming out of our driveway or going in, if there are, cyclists, pedestrians, people walking their dogs, scooters, whatever it is, they're also affected by this. And I'm not saying from the presentation that there's really much to be gained by getting rid of a couple of parking spots, particularly under that tree and such that we use on a regular basis. On the other hand, I do want to also point out, sorry, I forgot, that on the City Hall side, there are lots of parking spots, but unless there's an event at City Hall, those are rarely used. And so if there's some plan to shift the lanes around, that's the space that I think should be used rather than inconveniencing the residents on the west side. I'm sorry, on the east side. The residents are on the east side. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for that comment. Jesse, if you can unmute.
So, as Alex said, there's now a no turn on red sign posted at the corner of Walnut Street and Com Ave. But before and even since that no turn on red sign has been posted, there have been cars using the bike lane to pass traffic stopped at the red light that's going straight, and they use the bike lane and then make a right turn on red. And because of the fact that there's going to be a painted buffer between the bike lane and the travel lane, it looks like that unless you guys are interested in installing flex posts, I assume that it's going to invite more people to then go into the bike lane to then pass stop traffic and then make a right turn on red. And also I want to add that the no turn on red sign that was posted is hidden or is very difficult to see because it's under a tree. And I suggest making a note to install a second no turn on red sign on the opposite side of the intersection.
Okay. So I recall that the reason that the no turn on red sign was installed is because of the bike box that is now going to be painted. Vehicles are not allowed to continue and turn right across where there's a bike box. It's for these bicyclists coming down and then getting to the end, especially if they're trying to continue straight or take the left. So, vehicles that turn right on red are breaking the law. It becomes an enforcement issue, right? I don't know. Are there any comments? I don't know, Ned, if you had any comments, since we don't have Adrian here, in terms of the reason for needing to remove the parking. There still is parking one or two houses down along the remainder of the street, but I guess it was designed because of the bicycle improvement, to be able to have the buffered bike lane, sort of necessitated the removal of the parking, if I understand it. But let me see. Are you still here, Ned? Did you have any?
Yeah, that was the purpose, is to improve the alignment of the southbound bike lane and to provide for a buffer on the northbound bike lane. Both of those to improve bicycle safety on what is one of Newton's most heavily used cycling routes. I'm not exactly sure where the parking legally ends now, but I don't believe it is altogether that much different. David, you might know what the current regulation is.
Right. We can look that up, but I think that the whole idea of this improvement, on Walnut Street and many other parts of the city, is we really are trying to create more complete streets, improve our bicycle infrastructure, trying to make it safer so that people don't have to drive everywhere, that they can feel safer and be safer riding their bicycles. And I would say, there is a lot of parking still available on this block of Walnut Street, especially when compared to all the whole rest of Walnut Street, where all the other residents of Walnut Street to the south and to the north of this particular block, they don't have any parking at all left on Walnut Street. There is still a lot of parking left on Walnut Street. It is going to be more of an inconvenience for this particular neighbor who's going to have to park a little further down. But I think the Traffic Council needs to weigh that against the safety improvements and the improved bicycle infrastructure for the city. Any other comments? Mitch?
So, Ned, if I understand it, this yellow line down the middle has sort of been shifted towards the neighbor that had the comments, and then that's leading to the elimination of parking in their front, the second house in, and that's part of it. The other,
I don't think that the double yellow center line has been significantly shifted.
Okay, so I'm asking about that, but now I'm also linking it to the left turn lane that goes out to Commonwealth from Homer. It looks like the number of cars you can store in that lane maybe are 2 or 3 cars. Is that sufficient actually for that left lane?
I think that is sufficient. We have a lot of cars that take the left on Homer Street itself, right?
There's I don't think the length of that left turn lane is significantly different from the existing condition.
So my final sort of linking question, if you will. So the neighbor in the second house said that excuse me, parking on the other side. Yeah, where that is, that's infrequently used except for, city hall occasions. So is there an alternative plan? Excuse me. Is there an alternative plan that might knock out a couple of spaces there, maybe 2 or 3, shift that yellow line to the point where you could accommodate what you want on front of the neighbor's house without eliminating the parking? And then I had a sort of a question for the neighbor. Right now, the backup, when you pull out of your driveway and sometimes you wait for the second cycle, are you actually turning into the parking lane and trying to, in other words, you're backing up, are you backing up into the travel lane or into the parking lane currently?
Yes, you can unmute and respond.
Okay, I finally got permission to unmute. Okay, so I back out into the traffic lane. I cannot back out into the parking lane because there's no parking there. There's no parking by our driveway. The parking spots start near the end of our property by that tree.
So part of your house is a parking prohibition, and you're saying that if the prohibition goes further, then it affects your driveway, right?
Yeah, it's already very difficult with our driveway. I
Yes.
think it'll only get worse.
So it could be a few feet. It's not maybe even not a full parking spot, right?
I can't tell exactly.
Yeah.
From this diagram, it seems like it's 1 or 2 parking spots worth the change, because right now we can park under the tree and a little bit in front of it, meaning towards Com Ave. If that lane gets moved so that there's where it is in the picture now, then we're going to have more cars that are speeding up towards the traffic towards the traffic light to try to make the light, and that happens all the time. That they have lots of cars that are going through the yellow light, they're speeding up, and that makes our life more difficult.
So you're concerned about I know we don't want to do back and forth, but you're concerned about the whole free flow of traffic in addition to the difficulty of getting out from your driveway. So it's a broader issue.
Yes. So yes, there is very much a convenience issue in terms of we use those parking spots that are being eliminated. But in addition to that, I think it'll have a negative effect for us when we're going in and out of our driveway.
But you do have a parking spot, sounds like, you can use now, although not along the entire frontage.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And for our guests, that's more convenient than going in and out of our driveway. So that's why those parking spots are, in our view, very valuable for us, because of the difficulties of going in and out of the driveway.
Thank you.
So I think the bottom line is that Traffic Council should maybe consider weighing the safety improvements for bicyclists against the loss of parking on both ends of Walnut Street and the need to, for the residents to park a little bit further from their house. And sounds like that's the bottom line. Any other comments? Mitch, did you have a comment again?
Yeah, I mean, sort of my final comment. I just feel not capable of evaluating the commenter's issue on the second house, and because of that, I'm going to vote for it. But it may be that an appeal to Traffic Council may be the way to resolve it.
Right. Thank you. Like I've said a couple times in this meeting, if this particular vote does not go the way that the residents prefers, and if there's a strong feeling that there is an appeals process, which would require collecting signatures from abutting neighbors That's our regular process. And there's 20 days to be able to collect those signatures and file that appeal with the city clerk's office, with Danielle, who's on this call. The appeals form is located on the city webpage under city council, under traffic council, or in, right across the street from your house in city hall in the clerk's office. They could give you a copy. If that appeal has the correct number of signatures in time and is submitted before the July 2nd deadline, then this item would not move forward, and it would be transferred to the Public Safety and Transportation Committee for additional discussion, analysis, and a final vote. And I see your hand, Rachel Schiff.
Hi. Yeah. So I also live with Alex at 680 Walnut Street. I just wanted to highlight from this slide that you can see that the zone is moving 50 feet. So it's not 1 or 2 parking spaces. You guys would know better than I, but it is like 50 feet further down the street. So it's a little more different than it maybe appeared.
Okay, thank
you. So I'm looking at the current TPR, and it appears that the current parking extends to basically 610 feet north of Fenno Road, and the new extent would be about would be about 600. So I think it's not very clearly marked now. I'm not sure if there's I'm not sure if there's a sign. I didn't see one in Street View. But it doesn't look like 50 feet, but sort of be that as it may, to Mitch's point about seeing if we could shift the be able to shift the alignment, eliminate 2 or 3 parking spaces on the west side of the street to preserve the existing limit of the parking. I'm not sure if we would be able to do that, just because I'm not sure exactly how that would lay out, but I think we might be able to do it. David, a point of order. Would we be able to amend this docket item to make this a trial, and then we try to see if we could preserve the northern extent of the parking on the east side?
So if you have the language right now of what you would like the trial to be, right? We're talking about no change to TC 2925 as written. You're talking about, I'm not sure what you mean, like to redesign this?
Yes.
During the trial period?
Yes.
To have a staff person available to redesign this?
Yes.
So what would the trial be? The trial would be the language of TC 2925 as written, which is, no parking from Fenno Road to a point 150 feet north, and then to prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from a point 590 feet north of Fenno Road, not 590, some other number that we don't know.
Well, so my
Something
understanding
more than
is that a
500.
trial would give us some flexibility to try to resolve the issue and look at the roadway layout.
So would the trial be something like to hold this item and to move forward with the
Because we would need to, rather than keeping the parking extent constant on the west side, we would end up changing the parking extent on the west side, holding the northern extent on the east side, preserving the change to the southern extent on the east side.
Yeah, so I think that you are asking to make a motion to hold these two last items as a trial.
Yes.
Where TC 2925 would prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from Fenno Road to a point 150 feet north of Fenno Road, and for TC 2625 to prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from a point up to the judgment of the traffic engineer north of Fenno Road up to Commonwealth Avenue, right?
Yes.
Okay,
And
so we could
also
do it that way.
and add in a change to the northern extent on the west side, because we would need to eliminate 2 or 3 of those parking spaces.
So part of this would now affect the parking on the southbound side as well. I think that can fall within these two items since it's on the same street in the same block.
Okay.
You heard the video. Those aren't like the guy I got home. I was. Oh.
Okay, someone needs to mute. Okay, so should I repeat what I think? Are you making a motion, Ned?
Yes, what you just said.
Okay, so I think that the motion that Ned is making is to hold TC 2925 as a trial to move forward with the line painting contract, which is probably lined up, to prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from Fenno Road to a point 150 feet north of Fenno Road, and for TC 2625 to prohibit parking on the east side of Walnut Street from a point that is up to the judgment of the traffic engineer or transportation director, right?
Yes.
North of Fenno Road to Commonwealth Avenue, and also to consider the removal of parking on the opposite side of Walnut Street up to the judgment of the traffic engineer and transportation director. Right?
Correct.
Okay. Is that clear to everyone? Any discussion? Mitch?
So I think that's, oh, I lost you. I think that's good. I mean, again, somebody reading this, linking the two together, leaving it up to the judgment of the, whatever your title is, Ned, traffic engineer. Yeah.
The director of
traffic director, sorry. In order to accommodate necessary changes on the other side, something maybe that links it. Maybe you don't need that, but to me, it sort of shows the relationship of the two.
So as part of this trial, a decision is going to be made outside of the traffic council process. I think that we're saying we're going to do our best to see if it can be accommodated. but something is going to move forward as part of this trial. It might be exactly what we see on this slide. It might be something else, right?
Correct.
Okay. So when we hold it for a trial, the process would be moving forward. And then after it's done, we would be coming back to Traffic Council to talk about it again and to vote to make the changes permanent in our traffic and parking regulations. Okay. So any questions? Any comments? Okay. Danielle, can you call the roll for TC 2925 first?
Yes. Mr. Kosis,
This is a motion to hold. Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, TC 2925 is held 4-0.
And then can you please call the roll for TC 2625?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
and Mr. Cod.
Aye.
Okay, TC 2625 is held 4-0.
Okay, so that concludes the business for tonight. We'll see some of you at a future meeting. I'm not sure when it would be for these items that are held and additional items. Our next Traffic Council meeting, I believe, is going to be scheduled for July 31st. More information about that coming, and no Traffic Council meeting in August. So thank you all very much for the meeting, and have a good night.